Hi everyone, and welcome to this special online creative writing workshop. My name's Adam. I'm a writer and I write theatre mainly, and my last few shows have been in the ghost story genre. So our shows have involved 3 stories in one play which we've toured up and down the country. And one of the places we went to was the Duke's in Lancaster. And so the Dukes have been in touch with me to ask me to do this special online writing workshop for you. So here we are. If this is your very first writing workshop, don't worry. I'm going to talk you through everything, including how a workshop works. If you've done several workshops in the past, fantastic. I hope this will give you lots of opportunities to practice your writing and enjoy the writing. A couple of things before we get going. Firstly, in a creative writing workshop, certainly in my creative writing workshops, you cannot be wrong. It's impossible for you to be wrong. If you put something down on the page and it's writing and it's from you, that is the right thing to have put down. So you've got all this freedom ahead of you to enjoy. Secondly, we're just going to have fun with words. We're going to be creative with language. We're going to throw the ideas down on the page and see what happens. So I don't want you to see this as work or homework. We're going to have fun. We're going to throw some ideas down and see what we come up with. The theme, as I say, is in the area of spooky stories and ghost stories. So I hope you'll have a lot of fun doing that. Okay, so I'm going to put some slides up so you can follow the instructions along. But the first thing I want to tell you is how a workshop works. I'm going to give you a writing exercise. Then you'll write in response to it. We'll do this in short bursts, just a few minutes at a time. And the key is to keep writing. When it's time to write, I'll put a screen up and you can pause the video to do your writing. What will you need? Well, you'll need a pen and paper or something else to write with. You'll need something or someone to time the exercises. So when I tell you to go off and start writing, you're going to need to pause the video so that you can go off and actually do the writing. Next, sticky notes or slips of paper. There's an exercise later where I'd like you to use some sticky notes or slips of paper to create a piece of work. So it'd be useful if you had them, but not essential. So this is a writing workshop, so I think we need to dive straight into the first exercise. There are going to be 3 exercises, and this first one, in some ways, is the most important because it's what I call an icebreaker. And what that is a way for you to start warming up to the idea of writing. We need to loosen up those muscles and get the creative ideas flowing in our brains. So this is how the first exercise will work. What I want you to do is to write down as many words as you can that come to mind when you think about ghost stories or spooky stories. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this. So I'm going to put the writing slide up on the screen, pause the video, time it for 3 minutes, and then come back and join me and unpause. You ready? Okay, 3 minutes, get as many words down as you can. Go. If you didn't remember to pause the video, you're going to see me a lot sooner than you thought you would. So don't forget you can rewind it and pause it to do your writing. Now, how did you find that? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did you find that when you started thinking of words, more and more words kept popping into your brain? Because I find that when I'm getting these words down, one will follow another. I've got a list of words here that I'm going to show you. Have a look at those words and write down any that you don't already have. If you want to pause the video at this point so you can write them all down, you can do that, of course. Have you got them all? Good. Okay, don't forget you can rewind the video and pause it if you need to go back and make sure that you've got all the words written down. Okay, we're going to move on to the next part of this first exercise because that was just the beginning, all right? We're now going to use these words to create a piece of writing that's just our own, that's completely original, that only we could have written in the whole world. Okay, so here we go. I'd like you to pick 5 of the words that you wrote down on your page. I'm going to get you to write for 3 minutes. And I want you, in that 3-minute period, to write down a piece of work which includes the 5 words that you've picked. Okay, so the 5 words you've just selected from your big list of words, you're going to use all of those 5 words in a piece of writing. I don't want you to stop writing in the 3 minutes. I don't want you to worry about what you're writing. I just want you to write. You're just going to enjoy the process of writing. So, little recap of the rules. You've written 5 words down from your list. Okay, you've picked 5 words that you really like. You're now going to write for 3 minutes, non-stop. And you're going to write a piece of work using those 5 words at some point in the piece. Even if you use up all of your words, keep going until the 3 minutes is done. Okay. Again, I'm going to give you the writing screen. Time this for 3 minutes and see what you come up with. You ready? Okay. Go. How did you find that? Was it a challenge? Did you remember to pause the video? Otherwise, I'm back again really quickly, aren't I? I hope you enjoyed that. It can be quite difficult to write for 3 minutes or any period of time without stopping. But the whole idea of these writing workshops is for you to forget about everything else and just get the words down on the page. It doesn't matter what you put down in actual fact at this point. This is like a first draft, if that. Okay, we're just playing around and having fun with this. Later, you can take these extracts away and really work on them to make a second draft, a third draft, until it's at a place that you want it to be. But for now, we're just throwing words down and enjoying ourselves. So I hope you enjoyed that first exercise. If you're with somebody and you're working with somebody, make sure you read your work to each other so that you can hear it out loud. Or even you could swap them and you could read each other's, couldn't you? Okay, I want to throw an idea at you. It's a question, in actual fact. And if you're with somebody else at the moment, you can discuss this between you. If you're by yourself, you can just write down a couple of answers to this. And it's one question, which is, what does a good, spooky story need? Simple as that. I'd like you to write down some ideas, or if you're with other people, discuss it with them. What does a good, spooky story need? Pause the video for just a couple of minutes until you feel like you've got everything out of that question, and then join me again. Okay, well done. Welcome back. I hope that was an interesting conversation, or I hope you wrote lots of interesting things down on your piece of paper. What does a good spooky story need? It's quite a tricky question. I've got some responses. Now, you may have already said some of these things in your own conversation, or you may have written them down. So I think it needs a ghost, a monster, a villain, or a threat. Something that we can be a little bit scared of, a little bit creeped out by. It needs good description. So we need our readers to feel that they're really in the moment. They're really in that scene that we're describing. It perhaps needs a good ghostly setting. Where are you going to set your story? Have you thought about that? It needs atmosphere, doesn't it? It needs us to feel scared and spooked and ready to enjoy a good spooky tale. An exciting story. Just because it's a ghost story doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to grab our readers. So we need to work on making the story itself really exciting. Interesting language and vocabulary. Well, from the list that you wrote earlier, I would imagine there are lots of words in there that you may not usually include in a piece of creative writing. So go ahead and use them in the exercises we're doing today. Likeable or unlikable characters. We need to have characters that our readers can engage with, that they're interested in. An intriguing beginning, a thrilling middle, and a satisfying end. We all know that a story needs a beginning, middle, and end. But we want the beginning to intrigue us, to bring us in, to make us interested. We want the middle to be thrilling. We want to be so excited that we can't possibly put the story down. And we want the ending to be really satisfying. And we want to go away from the story thinking, I'm really glad that I read that. Creepy, weird moments. Yeah, it's a ghost story. We want some creepy moments in there, of course we do. Lots to think about as we move into our second writing exercise. This is an exercise called the House of Horrors. For this, it would be useful for you to have some sticky notes or some small slips of paper. If you need to, please ask somebody to help you with those slips of paper. It's just so we can rearrange our writing a little bit later. So don't worry about it for now, but we may need them for this exercise. It would also be really useful for you to have a big piece of paper. One idea is to stick 4 pieces of A4 together, perhaps with some sticky tape. First, go back to the piece of paper you were working on before. Maybe you're working in an exercise book or just some lined paper. What I'd like you to do is write at the top of your page the sentence, "Inside the House of Horrors." Now, I want you to write a list of everything you might find inside a house of horrors. To start with, just use 1 or 2 words. Bats, a ghost, cobwebs, things like that. Don't go into too much detail just yet. Now, I'm going to give you 4 minutes to get these things down. Okay, so when I put the writing screen up again, you need to pause it, set a timer for 4 minutes, or get somebody to time you and get these ideas down. Remember, at the moment, we're just writing down 1 or 2 words at the most. So things like bats, a ghost, cobwebs, they were my examples, okay? But everything that you can think of when you think of that sentence, "inside the house of horrors," and you need to fill up your page, or as best you can, with as many things that you can think of that you might find inside a house of horrors. You ready? Okay. Set your timers for 4 minutes and go. Okay, welcome back. Hope you got some good ideas there. I'm sure that you did. What are we going to do with these ideas, though? That's the question, isn't it? So the second task in this exercise, called the House of Horrors, is about transforming what you've put down into really descriptive and creative pieces of writing, 1 sentence at a time. So I want you to transform the list that you've written down into some brilliant, descriptive, spooky sentences. Before I actually set you off writing, I want to give you a couple of examples. So I could write, "Inside the House of Horrors, there were bats." Well, that's okay. That's a sentence that makes sense and it describes something in the house. But if I want to be really creative, here's something else I can do. I can add detail. What kind of bats were they? Where were they? What were they doing? And when I ask myself those questions, I can come up with sentences like this. "Inside the House of Horrors, there were beastly black bats balancing on the banisters." So, as well as that being a more colourful, more interesting, more descriptive sentence, we also get the repeat of that b, 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 b sound, don't we? Which, if you think about it, is a little bit like the beating of a bat's wings. It's the same sort of sound, isn't it? So we can be creative, not only in the words that we choose, but the sounds of the words as well. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You're going to take that list that you did in the last exercise, the last part of the exercise, and you're going to develop those ideas into several spooky sentences. See how many you can get in 5 minutes. Also, if you want to write a little bit longer than 5 minutes, you absolutely can. You can write for 10 minutes or 20 minutes if you like. It's completely up to you. These writing windows are really just a suggestion for you. So, if you're ready, set that timer. Don't forget to pause the video, and off you go. Welcome back. How did you get on with that? What I hope is that you've now got a page full of really creative, spooky sentences that will describe for your reader what was inside your house of horrors. That's what you should have in front of you now. Okay. I told you at the start that we might need some sticky notes or slips of paper. Well, that's where these will come in. The next part of the exercise is about taking these fantastic sentences you have and building a poem or a short story using them. Here's what you're going to do. I want you to write down your favourite 5 or 6 sentences or lines on the sticky notes. Then, using the sticky notes or slips of paper, construct the best and spookiest poem or short story that you can by sticking the lines down in the best order. So you'll have your big piece of paper, you'll get your sticky notes or your slips of paper, and just put them in the order that you think they should go in once you've written them down. Have a look at what you've got. Is that the best possible order for them to go in? If not, you can change it round. And then, the last thing I'd like you to do is once you've got an order that you love, have a look at the first line. At the moment we've got in the House of Horrors. Well, maybe you want to change that for something else. Maybe you want to make it a bit more exciting. And I also want you to think about the last line. How are you going to end that short piece of writing? If it's a poem, will it rhyme? Not all poems have to rhyme, of course. But will you use a rhyme scheme? That will dictate, won't it, where you put your different slips of paper. So have a think about all of these things when you're doing this. Okay, so I'm going to give you, let's say, 6 minutes for this. Okay, 6 minutes. And before you actually commit those sentences to your sticky notes, I just want you to think about something, which is you want them to be the best they can possibly be before you get to that point. Okay, so if you're not too keen on a line, don't include it in the poem. If you think you need to really work on a line to make it fantastic, spend some time and do that. Okay, so make sure that what you put down on the page is exactly how you want it to be. Alright, so I'll give you 6 minutes. But again, if you want to spend a lot longer than 6 minutes, go ahead. You can spend as long as you like on this. But I'll give you 6 minutes just to start to build that poem. Okay, you ready? And go. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. What you should have in front of you is something that resembles a poem or a short story with lots of exciting lines written out, with a fantastic opening line and a fantastic closing line. Perhaps you've stuck them down to the paper now, or perhaps you're still figuring out the order they're going to go in. Don't forget, you can pause this video at any point and carry on working, and then come back to the video whenever you like to, when you're ready to continue. Don't forget to read your work. If you're working with somebody else, if you're writing with somebody else, don't forget to read what you've done to them, or you could read it to somebody else later. Okay, we're going to move on to our last exercise of this session. And we're going to write about a journey through a haunted forest. And the way we're going to explore this idea is by using the senses. And we'll come to those individually in a moment. So, we're going to follow some steps and create a story about a journey through a haunted forest. I'm going to show you a slide, and with each of these slides you can pause it for as long as you need to get your ideas down. And then there will be a longer period of writing towards the end of this exercise. So, to begin with, I want you to write this sentence down. When I arrived at the edge of the forest, I could see. Now if you want to pause the video and write down some ideas of what you might see at the edge of a haunted forest. Next, I walked down the dark path and I could smell. So write that sentence down. I walked down the dark path and I could smell. And again, write some ideas down of the things that in a forest, the aromas and smells that fill the air. Pause the video if you want to get your ideas down. Next sentence. To my horror, I found that I had strayed from the path. I could taste. Again, get those ideas down. It's a trickier one, taste, isn't it? Because unless you're eating something or drinking something, you might not automatically think that you can taste anything, but you can be really creative. Could you taste electricity on the air? Could you taste fear in the atmosphere? Okay, write your ideas down. Be really, really creative. Remember, you cannot be wrong. Pause the video if you need to and write down things that you might be able to taste. Next, I arrived at a clearing. I could feel. Same process. Pause the video if you need to. Write down some things that you could feel all around you. Our fifth sense. I was surrounded by towering trees. I could hear. Last one now. Be really creative in what you write down. What kinds of things might you be able to hear in this forest? Don't forget, it's a haunted forest. And finally, I want you to write a description of what you encounter in the forest. What do you see? What do you come across? What do you discover in this forest? Give us lots of terrifying details. Tell us what you could see, hear, taste, smell, feel. Use all of the senses to get across to your reader how spooky it was to encounter this particular thing. What you should have is basically the skeleton of a story. So you've got all of these individual moments in a tale. And what we're going to do now, and it's the final thing we're going to do, is we're going to write the second draft of that story. So what you have is a first draft of the story, which I'm sure is absolutely fantastic. We're going to look now at how we might move on and make that first draft into a second draft. And in this second draft, we want to add more details. Change the senses in the different parts of the tale, if you like. Play around with it, see what works best for your story. Change the opening lines of the story. So these opening lines I've given you on the slides, perhaps you want to change them so that it's all your original writing. Give more background to the story. How did you end up at this haunted forest? How did your character end up there? Why are they there? What drew them to this haunted place? What kind of character are they? Give us some more information and make it your own. That's the main thing about this. Make it your own. Now, before I give you that last little bit of time to write your second draft of the story, I wanted to give you some tips when you're creating a second draft. Because actually that can be quite tricky, can't it? When you've got this piece of work in front of you, you think it's great, but perhaps it isn't finished. How do we finish it? How do we turn something from a first draft into a second draft, edging closer to a final finished piece of work? Well, here are some ideas. Here's a piece of writing, and I'll read it to you, and then I'm going to show you the changes I might make to make this first draft into a second draft. And I want you to think about the importance of atmosphere in writing. How do we make it so that your readers really feel that they're involved in the story? How do we get across that creepiness and that spookiness? So I'm going to read this to you now. One day, I walked into a forest and saw a terrifying monster. It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. I was terrified. Luckily, the monster did not see me, and I ran away just in time. I had escaped the monster. So there we go. That's my first attempt. Now, it's quite good. It's got some exciting moments in it. We meet a monster, but quite quickly the character escapes the monster. So in terms of atmosphere and in terms of making this a second draft, there's lots we can do with that little piece of writing to make it better, to make it more exciting, to make it more of a treat for our readers. So I'm going to show you now a second attempt at that. I've taken the ideas from the first attempt and I've worked on them to make them longer, more descriptive, give the character some background, and to make the story more exciting for my reader. It goes like this. I want to tell you about that day, the day when everything changed. What I saw on that strange, misty September morning still has me waking in the night, my heart hammering on the inside of my chest as if begging to be let out. The day was clogged with fog which hung in the air, thick and dark. It had reminded me of the porridge Mum had burned that morning, back when I was safe in my own kitchen. Now, though, the wind tugged at my duffel coat, dragging the heavy fabric this way and that in a violent dance. As I eyed the towering dead trees and the branches up above, which looked to me like the reaching fingers of 100 skeletons, I began to regret agreeing to the dare. Why did I always do what Parkins told me to? Why didn't I ever stand up for myself? The bitter smell of pine was all around, making my nostrils tingle, sending electric shock messages to my brain to stay alert. I'd heard stories about this place, but they were only stories, right? So did you see there how I took the basic idea of the first example and expanded it and made it more exciting and added character? I gave the character some details. I gave him a bit of a backstory. He had this friend called Parkins, who's perhaps a bit of a bully. His mum burnt the porridge that morning, which gives us a little bit of a glimpse into his home life. And as I continued writing, I would build on those things to make sure that the character stayed consistent and we learnt more about him, and therefore we cared about the character. Okay, so have a look at those two pieces if you like, if you want to rewind the video and look at the differences between them. Obviously the second version is quite a lot more descriptive. It's more developed as a piece of writing, isn't it? So maybe that would be a third or fourth draft, who knows? But certainly I've taken the original idea and made it that much more exciting, descriptive, and hopefully enjoyable for a reader. So I'm going to put the writing slide up one more time, pause it for as long as you like to, and I'll join you at the end just to say goodbye. Okay, enjoy writing that second draft. See you soon. Welcome back for the final time. How did you get on with that second draft? Are you done? Are you finished? Is the piece complete? Or are you tempted to do a third draft? It's tricky, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me in this writing workshop. I hope you enjoyed the exercises. You can rewind the video and start again if you like, because what you write the second time round is likely to be different to what you wrote the first. So you can enjoy this as many times as you like. Thanks so much for joining me. Keep writing. Remember, in creative writing, you can't be wrong. Just get those ideas down on the page and have fun. Enjoy yourselves. See you again. Thanks.